There's a race in the New World Pac-12, and it is going to start quickly.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest and craziest sport on planet Earth. Boise State with some shocking odds as far as the playoffs go, and I'll give you my ACC power rankings on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, the Pac-12 has got Texas State. The Pac-12 has got 5 Mountain West schools. The Pac-12 has got Oregon State and Washington State. The Pac-State Conference, some are calling it, but it is indeed the Pac-12. Will it wind up getting to 12 schools again one day? I actually doubt it. I think it is far more likely they would only add a couple, or the race that I'm about to talk about would play itself out. So once this league kicks off, and it is going to be fun, I actually am stoked about the start of this college football season. I'm even more stoked for next year because the Pac-12 will have an honest-to-goodness conference that I could watch until midnight, 1 in the morning, as God intended. So the league is going to start a race the moment it starts playing football, particularly league games, and that race is who can distinguish themselves to get an invitation to a Power 4 conference one day. Now, the schools have signed on to the grant of rights through 2031. That is, perhaps not coincidentally, around the time other conference media right deals come up for renegotiation. And we all know those things happen a year or two in advance. But in the lead up to that time, every single one of these schools that is banded together, that tweets welcome to this member at the same time and pushes out all the information. I'm here for the Pac-12, pushing out data to say why they're the number 5 conference in the country. I tend to agree. Amidst all of that, there is a thought in the back of every university president's mind, president's vote on realignment, put that on my gravestone, please, that we've got to be ready to jump to the Big 12 or the ACC or the Big 10 or whatever happens if the moment arises. And none of these schools, not a single one of them, should feel an ounce of allegiance to the others if one of those offers comes along. You might think that's cruel, hypocritical, not what you want. Guess what? It's the world we've got. They have to be Nick Fury. Shield takes the world as it is, not as they would like it to be. Now, that was a curious metaphorical movie line to pop into my head, seeing as S.H.I.E.L.D. had secretly been infiltrated by Hydra. But that particular line is applicable here. You cannot live in the world of optimistic, ideal, what's nice, what we want, what we're used to. Nope, you have to go with what you have and what will come next because of that. So the race is going to be on. And I have said several times, and until I'm presented evidence to the contrary, I think in a 5-year window, the G5 playoff spot that all these conferences are fighting for on an annual basis, and it will just be the one spot. I think almost always I would be hard-pressed to see a world where the group of 5 gets 2 teams in the playoff. I mean, maybe one day if Boise State goes undefeated with a win over somebody like Notre Dame and I don't know, Tulane's 11-2, winning the American. Maybe. I don't know. But let's go down that rabbit hole another day. You've got the Pac-12, the American, the Sun Belt, the Mountain West, the MAC, and Conference USA that are all fighting for that Group of 5 playoff spot. I think in a 5-year snapshot, the Pac-12 is getting at least 2, probably 3, and maybe 4 of those bids. I don't think they're getting 5. Because you have programs in the American like Memphis, like Tulane, maybe South Florida or UTSA can make a push that I think are playoff capable and the math will work out in their favor. The strength of the Pac-12s, though, is in Washington State and Oregon State being the founding members of this new conference. That gives you, or at least it should, a level of credibility that's an advantage, I think, over the other leagues out there. So It won't be easy. Someone's going to have to, pick up some quality non-conference wins, or maybe have just an exceptional regular season overall, maybe go unbeaten in league play. There are a lot of factors in there, but every single playoff appearance is just going to be a feather in the cap of that Pac-12 school to show off to the Big 12 would be the most likely league further down the line. And this is why, as I've said in the past, UNLV, in my view, is making a mistake by not going to the Pac-12, which reportedly they turned down on multiple occasions. They were asked, there were conversations, they said, nope, we're sticking with the Mountain West. Gloria Nevarez did a yeoman's work for that conference to keep them around, and probably, frankly, saved the conference in the short term by keeping UNLV in the fold. So with that situation in mind, the Pac-12 is trying to get any of the Pac-12 members are trying to get themselves into the Big 12. They'd love to. What's the best way to do that? Show that you are adding something to the league, that you're not just a random addition, that you're not just a fun team, that you actually can go into the conference and compete right away. Why did the Pac-12 pick the schools that it did from the Mountain West? Because they knew those are the programs that are most likely to compete because of their track record. Utah State doesn't necessarily have the best one. They flashed up from time to time. Colorado State has been good in the last few years. UNLV became really attractive. Why? They won recently. Why did Texas State get into the Pac-12? Because they won in the last couple of years, and there are geographical considerations. You have to position yourself thinking as any school in this conference now, any of the 8 football playing members, you have to think of yourself in that same light. How do we stay on everyone's radar? How do we look like an attractive realignment target somewhere down the line? And the way you do that more than anything else, more than television viewership, more than fundraising, more than stadium facilities, and all of those things can certainly come into play and matter. You get to the playoff. So if you're going to have, let's say between 2026 and 2031, let's say the Pac-12 gets 4 teams into the playoff. If Boise does that twice, they might pass Oregon State and Washington State in the pecking order. The Beavs and Cougs should be at the top of the list, but once you're talking about football strength and that coming into, or that being the primary factor that a league looks at as to why they should or should not add a school to grow its membership, boy, Boise looks like they're in a really, really good position. I'll talk about them more later on today's show. But if Oregon State gets in there twice, if Washington State gets in there twice, or if San Diego State starts to surge and they get in there once or twice, those playoff appearances should be viewed like getting Willy Wonka's golden ticket. That is the way that you elevate. Because if Colorado State goes throughout the next 6 years in the Pac-12, and 5-6 years, and has no playoff appearances but some good seasons, are they going to get a look? No. What if Colorado State, this is a fun hypothetical, just bear with me here. What if Colorado State makes the playoff 3 times between 2026 and 2030? That school suddenly looks a lot different. So that race is going to start next year. I'm here for it. It adds an extra level of juice. Even if this new Pac-12 is temporary and it gets blown up one day, I tell you what, it'll be a heck of a temporary run. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter or what have you. Speaking of Boise State, their odds in this playoff space are insane. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting for forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping, and that is where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. You can save up to 60% off with killer last-minute deals, and I've used Game Time myself to go to a sporting event, to go to a comedy show. It's the same process, and it's a great process. You get all the information you need ahead of time. You get a great deal. You know exactly what to expect. The ticket gets delivered to your phone. Bingo, bango, bongo, you are done, and you're ready to roll. Take the guesswork out of buying concerts and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Boise's odds over on FanDuel, and I'm sure other places too, but we like FanDuel here, official sportsbook of the Locked On Network. They are simply insane. So let's start with the conference championship odds. Boise is not just the favorite. They're a minus odds favorite to win the Mountain West. Now, do you hear that, Dan Mullen at UNLV? Do you hear that, Sean Lewis of San Diego State? Do you see the outright disrespect given to the rest of the Mountain West in its final iteration with these schools before everybody takes off? They think Boise State's just going to do it again, a third straight Mountain West title. Oh, that just, no way. I mean, Spencer Danielson can't do anything but win Mountain West championships in the eyes of the sports book. Boise's a minus 135 favorite to win the Mountain West. Minus 135. There is not a single other team in the country that's a minus favorite to win the conference. Think about it like this. The Big 12 is one of the most parity-driven leagues in the country, maybe in the history of the sport right now. Last year, the team picked to finish last, Arizona State, which was always ridiculous, but I didn't think they'd win the league. They were picked to finish last. They won the league. The betting favorites to win the Big 12 this year are plus 600. 600, and Boise State is minus 135. This is a situation where the Mountain West should be viewed as Boise against the field. I bet you could find a prop bet out there if you looked really hard. If not, there will be one that shows up. Will it be Boise or will it be the field? Because that's the way that the odds makers see the league right now. They've got UNLV second, San Jose State third, and Fresno State fourth. I think San Diego State is a little low on this list at plus 3,200 personally, but hey, what the heck do I know? Decent amount. Anyway, so that's not the craziest thing with Boise State, though. And this goes back to the conversation I was having earlier on today's show, one-way conversation, I suppose, about the college football playoff. Because to make the playoff in the Group of 5 ranks, you have got to elevate your profile with a big win, or have a profile that's already elevated so that you can be the highest ranked conference champion. So Boise to make the playoff this year is plus 194. That's insane. How insane, you ask? Allow me to explain. There is not a single other Group of 5 team that has odds to make the playoff that are shorter than plus 820. That's Tulane over in the American with John Sumrall, who is a darn good football coach. And I wonder if part of this is an overreaction to Boise State making the playoff last year. They don't have Ashton Jeanty anymore. I feel good about their running back room. I know their quarterback, Maddox Madsen, is good. They lost a couple guys in the portal. They also kept a couple guys out of the portal that were potentially one in particular defensive lineman was going elsewhere, and then decided, now I'm going to go back to Boise. Maybe he sees what's coming. But right off the bat, one of the underrated games, not on my radar, of course, because I love G5 football and talk about it consistently here on the show. When you're talking about teams that could find themselves in the college football playoff this year, Boise State opens on August 28th against South Florida. That game will be discussed on this program because the playoff implications are incredibly real. But let me read off this Boise State schedule to you. So they have South Florida on the road, by the way. They have to go all the way to Tampa. From Boise to Tampa. That's a long trip. Long trip on Thursday, August 28th. Eastern Washington is up next to win that game. At Air Force. That's not easy. Appalachian State in the Sun Belt, really good Group of 5. They go at Notre Dame on October 4th. That's their big marquee game. Last year it was at Oregon in week 2. They darn near won. They go at Notre Dame. It's going to be an exciting environment. It's going to be a fun opportunity for Boise State. I'm not expecting they walk out of South Bend winners, but hey, worse teams than Boise State have won in that stadium before. You need look no further than last year when Northern Illinois beat the Irish, or maybe the year before, or was it the year before, when Marshall went in there and won, when Stanford went in there and won. So that's entirely possible. And then Mountain West play begins in earnest. New Mexico, UNLV, at Nevada, Fresno State, at San Diego State, Colorado State, at Utah State, and then potentially the Mountain West Championship game. Does that sound like a bunch of bottom feeders? Does that sound like you're missing the heavy hitters in the Mountain West? It sure doesn't to me. Kind of seems like you're playing all of the toughest teams. Air Force, high floor program. Colorado State has sneaky nice momentum in the Mountain West football landscape right now. San Diego State has got a massive transfer portal haul. It's Sean Lewis's second year. I think he's a pretty solid coach. They've got Fresno State on the schedule and UNLV with App State and South Florida. As far as Group of Five playoff schedules go, or just schedules in general, how much tougher can it get? I think right now the Mountain West is the best Group of Five conference in the country. It's either them or the American. And Boise is playing one of the teams that should be in the top half of the American in South Florida, and a team that should be in the top half of the Sun Belt in Appalachian State. I bring all this up to say, would Boise making the playoffs shock me? No. Do I think they are being overvalued to not just be that big of an outright favorite in the Mountain West? The next closest team is UNLV with their odds of plus 650. I think they're being overvalued with their odds to make the playoff compared to everybody else. There are paths out there that are easier to get into the college football playoff at the Group of Five level than Boise State. There are way easier paths to get out there. Now, are those teams as good as Boise State? Perhaps not. Do they have the pedigree with their coaching staff? You return a head coach and a quarterback that were just going toe-to-toe with Penn State, who were the runners-up in the Big Ten and who were also in the Final Four for the playoff a season ago. Yeah, I know that game finished 31-14. Go back and watch it. That game was perfectly competitive. Penn State pulled away a little bit at the end. That was not a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. Does Boise have that same team? No, because they don't have Ashton Jeanty. Are they still going to have a really good team? Yeah, they should. But this path compared to last year, I just don't see that as being nearly as easy. Because remember, if you're going to make the playoff, you have to be one of the 5 highest ranked Group of 5 teams in the country, unless Boise's about to go undefeated. I mean, if they beat Notre Dame and go undefeated, they don't have to win that Mountain West Championship game. They'll probably be back into the playoff. I don't think they're going to do that, though. To play all the heavy hitters in the Mountain West, to play both Appalachian State and South Florida, and have Notre Dame on the schedule, you've got to go 11-2 or better. You can lose Notre Dame. You can probably lose one other game to a Group of 5 team, and then you've got to win the conference championship. I'm just saying, if you're seeking value, I'm not against Boise being the favorite to make the playoff for a Group of 5 team, but plus 194 dropping down to plus 820, I think that's absurd. Just because Ashton Jeanty is a game-changing player, we all know that. Heisman finalist last year. Some think he should have been the winner. I would have voted for him if I had a vote, but alas, I do not. And of course, Travis Hunter won. But the thing with Boise is that path, man. I can't get past it. I cannot get past it. And to see the next closest team as being 700 points, if you're a FanDuel sort of guy, there's value out there. That's all I want to say. There is rock solid value. ACC Power Rankings. Are you ready? I am. I want to say that the ACC is easy to power rate. Nothing's ever as easy as it sounds, of course. I'm giving it a stab. I have a clear-cut number one, which makes it somewhat easy. When you have a starting point, you can let things snowball. You can let things roll along. Clemson is clearly, I mean very clearly, and should be on paper, talk about them, hype them up, give them big expectations for the season. They are the preseason number one team in the ACC in my book. They have got a high-level returning production. They won the conference championship game a season ago. And And you also consider they've got Cade Klubnik, who's still playing quarterback there somehow in a season of college football where quarterbacks are either inexperienced or new to their team. Now, Will Howard was new to his team last year at Ohio State. That, of course, went very, very well. But the Cade Klubniks, the Drew Allers, the Garrett Nussmeyers of the world, they just don't exist all that often. There's a lot of new, whereas with Clemson, it's a lot of the same. It's a lot of the same players. It's the exact same system. It's the same quarterback. I still think Dabo Swinney can coach. Hot take, Dabo Swinney can still coach. Clemson should be the preseason number 1 team in the ACC. They're number 1 in my power rankings. And number 2, I have Miami. Now, this is contingent upon Carson Beck staying healthy. Of course, he had the injury last year at Georgia, didn't throw much, if at all, during, I think he threw a little bit during spring ball with the Hurricanes. I know what Carson Beck is. He can be volatile. He can also throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's the range. He can throw 3 interceptions while he does it, but he could go for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns if you throw it enough. We know Miami is willing to throw the football now under Mario Cristobal more than he was perhaps during his time at Oregon. But Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, just coached Cam Ward into being the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. He could put Carson Beck squarely back into the top 10 of the NFL draft in 2026 with this upcoming season. No Xavier Restrepo to throw the ball to, but Miami feels pretty good. And no Elijah Arroyo, but they feel good about who they're going to throw the football to. So they have to be better on defense. I think they will be. They won't be as good on offense because Carson Beck is not Cam Ward. They're different players. Ward is much more creative, much more mobile, and Beck is much more about playing within the structure of an offense. But that offense looked pretty darn good last year. So you keep him healthy, Miami should be the number 2 team in the ACC. You don't keep him healthy, Miami could have a Florida State sort of season like last year because I don't think they're crazy about the quarterback options they have, which is why they went out and got Carson Beck. So, got to keep him upright, but that offensive line that Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal have built should be able to do that. At number 3, speaking of quarterbacks that I like, Louisville. And Miller Moss, I don't just like him because I had him on the show a while back. I've always been a Miller Moss fan. I did not think he was the problem at USC. He goes to one of the most underrated quarterback whisperers in the country in Jeff Brom at Louisville, who has done a lot with not elite quarterback play. Tyler Shuck was good last year. And by the way, Louisville was a good team. Walked into Clemson and kicked the Tigers all over the field. I mean, they went on a hunting expedition and just spread the guts of the Tigers all over that field. I still can't believe that happened, quite frankly, because that's a top 10, 15 environment in all of college football, and Louisville said, yeah, well, this isn't that hard. But they have to be more consistent. I think Miller Moss, though, does allow them to push for a conference championship game appearance this year. Sneaky potential playoff contender there, the Louisville Cardinals. At number 4, I'm not going where most people would probably go here. Georgia Tech. Haynes King is still there. He and Cade Klubnik, man, they have been quarterbacks in this league for a long time. I mean a long, long time. Georgia Tech was, of course, everyone's favorite team for a little while last year when they upset Florida State, sent the Seminoles into a death spiral for their 2024 season. But what we all forget about Georgia Tech is not just that they beat, well, we don't forget they beat FSU. I think people forget that they were one play away about 8 times from beating Georgia on the road, the SEC champions. Georgia Tech is my favorite dark conference championship dark horse in any league in the country. I would have that be Illinois, except the top of the Big Ten is so darn good. The top of the ACC, I think, is much more gettable. Yes, Clemson is going to be an elite team this year. But Louisville and Miami, that's a lot easier to catch than, say, Oregon and Penn State over in the Big Ten, which is who I'd rank Illinois behind, putting them fourth as a dark horse contender. Georgia Tech, do not be surprised if the Yellow Jackets wind up in the ACC championship game this year. I won't be. They play some fun games. And don't be surprised if this year, at home, they figure out a way to try and beat Georgia. So, at number 5, I've got SMU. Kevin Jennings returns after a good, productive season last year. Rhett Lashley's a good coach. SMU's invested heavily in their roster. Big transfer portal class. I think their roster will be good. I know their staff can win games. Their schedule is much tougher. I think they're a good team. I can see them getting back to the ACC title game. I don't think they will. I think last year they took advantage, which they deserve credit for. They took advantage of a weaker schedule. I think they wind up in the 8-9 win range after going 11-1 last year, just behind SMU. And I thought about flipping these teams. I really did. I really did. You know who quietly had a 9-win season in a Power 4 conference last year? Duke. Duke was this close to beating Miami. They had, what was it? I think a 17-point lead in the third quarter of that game on the road. By the way, they collapsed defensively. Cam Ward did what Cam Ward just kind of does, which is score a bunch of points really quickly. Duke had a 28-17 lead in this football game, and then oh man, what a run! Then there was a 36-3 run by Miami in the second half. But start of the third quarter, Duke took a 28-17 lead. Who's the quarterback? Oh, that's right, Darian Mensah, who was a highly coveted target, could have gone to the SEC, decides to go to Duke instead. They're starting to invest in football. Manny Diaz, solid coach, rock solid. He wasn't a disaster at Miami. He just wasn't great. And he's getting a second chance at Duke. I've got them right there behind SMU and just ahead of Pitt, who started 7-0, and I don't need to remind Pitt fans what happened in the second half of last year. I might have, you know what? I'm making an on-the-fly adjustment here to my rankings that I prepped for this segment. I'm moving Pitt down one. I'm moving Syracuse up one. I think Steve Angeli could be solid if he winds up starting at quarterback. And if the Orange and Fran Brown figure out the quarterback position, I'm bullish on Fran Brown. Haven't talked about him in far too long here on the show. So I'll have Syracuse, then Pitt. Virginia Tech and Cal are programs cut from the same cloth. They are trying to get back to what they used to be and always should have been. The potential is so very real, but the on-field results just don't match what should happen. Should. That's why we say things are on paper and theoretical and should happen. Well, Cal and Virginia Tech should be able to have an 8 or 9 win season, and for some reason they just won't. I picked Virginia Tech to win 10 games last year, and they won 6. They lost to Vandy week 2. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Vandy, of course, turned out to be solid. But Virginia Tech, I think Brent Pry's under a pretty solid amount of pressure. You had year 1, you got better in year 2, and I thought year 3, oh boy, it was 7-6. Here we go. Took a step back, went 6-7. That's not good. That's not great. Do they have a solid team? I think they should. I think their staff is under some heat, so they should. Virginia Tech and Cal should both coach with some urgency. I will take the Hokies over the Bears. I don't know by how much, but I'll take maybe because there's the Ron Rivera cloud kind of hanging over Justin Wilcox, and I'm not entirely sure how that situation plays out. But Virginia Tech, then Cal, NC State, Boston College, Virginia. Frankly, you could put any of these teams in any order, and I wouldn't have a significant pushback. NC State was another team last year that I thought would do well, that I thought would do better, that I thought would have, that step forward kind of moment. And boy, Tennessee took them to the woodshed early in the year last season. And I mean, Dave Doran's a good coach. NC State's solid, but I'd put NC State above Boston College and Virginia. I'll say that. You can swip BC and the Cavaliers if you'd like. I have not yet mentioned Florida State. Now I am. I close out this list with North Carolina, Wake Forest, and Samford. I remain down on the Bill Belichick situation, but Florida State is going to be a better football team. Let's not lose sight and fall victim to brand bias of how horrific they were last season. I mean truly, truly awful. The worst preseason top 10 team in the history of college football, and one of the worst Power 4 teams in recent memory. Now, you go and upgrade your offensive staff, getting Gus Malzahn, former UCF head coach. You go get the Nebraska defensive staff, which is a great move for Mike Norvell. You go add more pieces heavily in the transfer portal, and they need to do more in the high school recruiting ranks, but on the field this year, they'll be better. Their staff will be better. Some of their players, I think, can be an improvement. Castellanos at quarterback, we know he's confident going into Alabama game, which I don't know if that's the best idea. Poking the bear a little bit as a 12.5-point road underdog, but hey, you do you, Thomas Castellanos. Florida State does not deserve benefit of the doubt to be higher than where I have them on this list. They really don't. Just because they went out and did some nice things in the offseason. You wouldn't give that level of respect to, imagine if Boston College did that. Imagine if, let's say Jeff Hafley was still the head coach. Or no, let's say Bill O'Brien goes 2-10 this year. He fires his offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator and brings in an upgrade at quarterback. Would you move Boston College up to the middle of the pack in your power rankings, or would you say they got to prove it first? That's where Florida State is for me. So, Stanford rounds out the list, but my ACC power rankings to review: Clemson, Miami, Louisville, Georgia Tech, SMU, Duke, Pitt, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Cal, NC State, Boston College, Virginia, Florida State, North Carolina, Wake Forest, and the Stanford Cardinal. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.